In modern life, motion is mistaken for meaning. Everyone is rushing, chasing, updating, responding. Productivity is worshipped. Stillness is viewed as laziness. But Nietzsche saw through this illusion long before the digital age. He knew that constant motion often hides a deeper weakness, the inability to be alone with oneself. We keep moving because we're afraid to stop, because stillness reveals discomfort, and discomfort demands reflection. But real power begins when you stop moving for the sake of motion, when you step outside the current and ask, "Why am I doing this?" That moment of pause, of questioning, is a threat to the machinery of conformity. Nietzsche believed that strength isn't measured by how fast you move, but by how clearly you choose. Motion without purpose is noise. Action without depth is distraction. A lion doesn't chase every noise in the jungle. It waits, observes, confronts only what's worthy of its energy. When you reclaim your right to be still, to not answer, to not engage, to not hurry, you begin to separate what's urgent from what's important. You start moving only when it matters. And in a world obsessed with reaction, that kind of restraint makes you powerful. Because those who are still see. Inaction is often confused with weakness. People assume if you're not speaking, you have nothing to say. If you're not moving, you're being passive. But Nietzsche saw the inverse. There is immense power in choosing not to act. Strategic inaction is not apathy. It's calculation. It is the discipline to conserve your energy until the moment is right, and the strength to resist the social pull toward instant reaction. Most people react to everything, every insult, every opportunity, every change in tone. They scatter their focus across 1,000 unworthy moments, and in doing so, they exhaust themselves, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But you? You wait. You observe the pattern before making your move. You let others reveal their intentions while you remain unreadable. You understand that silence can unsettle more than words, and absence can say more than presence. Nietzsche warned against being pulled into the chaos of the crowd. To be effective, your will must be yours, unmoved by popularity, urgency, or the need to be seen. And that means saying no more often than yes, not out of fear, but out of force. Because the one who can do nothing and still be calm holds an authority that no amount of noise can match. Resist the urge to act on impulse. That's when your power begins to grow. Silence is often mistaken for absence, a void, a weakness, a lack of something to say. But Nietzsche understood the exact opposite. Silence is pressure. It is presence without demand. Stillness that fills the room without uttering a single word. Most people rush to fill silence with sound, explanations, defenses, apologies. They believe control lies in what they say. But control often lies in what they choose not to say. In the restraint to let words burn out on their own. In the power to let others wonder what you're thinking, and never relieve them of the mystery. When you speak, you define your boundaries. But when you are silent, you become formless. You stop giving people something to push against. You force them to confront themselves, their guilt, their assumptions, their weakness. Silence is not absence. It is refusal. Refusal to be baited. Refusal to be read. Refusal to become predictable. Nietzsche believed the strongest individuals speak rarely, but when they do, it echoes. Because their words weren't scattered. They were saved, sharpened, held in reserve until the moment of impact. In a world that talks too much and listens too little, silence becomes its own language. And those who master it? They are heard without ever raising their voice. The need to belong is deeply human. So when the crowd moves, most follow. Not because they believe in the direction, but because stillness feels dangerous. To stand still is to be noticed, questioned, exposed. But Nietzsche believed that stillness in the face of motion is a mark of strength. To resist the herd is to claim ownership over your own judgment. It is the refusal to trade truth for inclusion. And it is difficult, not because the crowd is always wrong, but because the pull to conform is always strong. You will be tempted to act just to match the pace of others, to adopt urgency that isn't yours, to mirror opinions you haven't examined. But when you do, you abandon yourself. in pieces, in silence, until nothing of you remains but performance. Stillness, then, becomes resistance. It is not passivity, it is confrontation, without movement. It says, I will not rush just because you panic. I will not agree just because you shout. I will not move just because you need to be followed. Nietzsche saw the herd not as evil, but as unexamined. It moved from fear, not from truth. And in a world of reaction, the one who stands still becomes a mirror, forcing others to see their own unthinking motion. So stay still, and let the herd feel the weight of your refusal to follow. There is a trap built into every confrontation, the need to prove yourself. Someone questions your intelligence, you defend it. Someone disrespects your choices, you justify them. Someone misunderstands your silence, you fill it with noise. And in that moment, you lose power. Nietzsche saw that the truly powerful do not need to be seen, explained, or understood. They exist beyond interpretation. To constantly prove is to constantly place your self-worth in the hands of others, and what the crowd gives, it can easily take away. To withdraw instead, without apology, without explanation, is not defeat. It is dominance of the self. Because withdrawal is not weakness, it's choice. The deliberate decision to no longer waste energy on those who can't hear you, won't respect you, or refuse to meet you on equal ground. When you stop arguing, others are left with their assumptions. Let them sit with them. Let your absence speak where your words are no longer required. Power is not always what you say. Sometimes it's the silence you leave behind. Most people live at the mercy of their reactions. A word offends, and they lash out. A look wounds, and they withdraw. A challenge appears, and they feel compelled to respond. Instantly, loudly, without reflection. Nietzsche saw this as slavery, not to others, but to the self. To react is natural, to not react is mastery. Every time you react on impulse, you give the other person control. You let their behavior dictate your state, and you become predictable, easy to provoke, easy to read, easy to manipulate. But when you resist the urge to respond, something shifts. You reclaim the space between stimulus and action. You begin to choose rather than obey your emotion. You pause, and in that pause, power grows. The one who cannot be provoked cannot be ruled. This is not passivity, it's precision. You observe without absorbing. You feel without acting blindly. You let the moment pass without handing it your peace. Nietzsche would not ask you to be numb, he would ask you to be still. Because stillness is not silence, it is control. And in a world trained to react, your calm becomes your revolution. In a world addicted to speaking, silence becomes unsettling. Most people talk to fill space, to prove relevance, to manage how they are perceived. But Nietzsche understood that while others talk, the wise observe. The power does not belong to the one who speaks the most, but to the one who listens best. Let them talk. Let them reveal their values, their fears, their contradictions. Most people expose themselves in the noise they create. You don't have to interrogate them. You only have to listen, not with judgment, not with reaction, just quiet awareness. Every boast is insecurity in disguise. Every complaint is a confession. Every lie, a mirror. The louder they speak, the more clearly they show you who they are. When you choose not to participate in the performance, when you simply watch, you begin to see the difference between what is said and what is true. You no longer feel the need to respond, to match energy, to join the game. Observation is not passivity. It is data. And with it, you gain the one advantage most people never possess: clarity without cost. To chase something is to announce that you do not yet possess it. Approval, attention, validation, the moment you pursue them, you hand over your power. Nietzsche knew this. Neediness repels. Self-sufficiency draws others in. People feel it. When you walk into a room looking for recognition, you shrink. But when you walk in already full, not arrogant, just grounded, others notice. Not because you demanded attention, but because you didn't. The act of not chasing changes everything. You stop bending your values to keep the peace. You stop lowering your standards to maintain connection. You stop asking for what you can already give yourself. And in that refusal, something magnetic happens. People lean in. They wonder why you're so calm, why you're so still, why you're not performing. They can't name it, but they feel it. And it pulls them, quietly, toward your gravity. You didn't need to chase anything. You simply made yourself the kind of person worth approaching. And then, you waited. Doing nothing isn't laziness. It's control. In a world obsessed with action, choosing stillness is often the most radical act, but only if it's intentional. Nietzsche saw that most people act out of compulsion, not choice. They speak because silence feels unbearable. They move because stillness feels unsafe. They react not because it's right, but because it's automatic. Their entire life becomes a pattern of nervous motion, empty of direction. But the one who does nothing, on purpose, begins to see clearly. Because true stillness isn't frozen, it's focused. It says, I will not waste my power proving what I already know. I will not dilute my attention just to appear busy. I will not move unless the move is mine. You wait. You watch. You hold back. Not because you're afraid, but because you're free. Free from urgency. Free from validation. Free from the need to fill the space. The power of doing nothing is in knowing that your presence alone holds weight. You don't rush to fix. You don't rush to explain. You let silence do its work, because sometimes the strongest message is no message at all. Influence is not always created through visibility. Sometimes the most powerful force in a room is the one that isn't there. Nietzsche understood that withdrawal is not the end of power. It is its intensifier. Most people believe that presence equals relevance. So, they overextend. They explain, perform, apologize. They exist everywhere because they're afraid of being forgotten. But this constant presence cheapens them. It turns their worth into background noise. But when you step back, intentionally, calmly, your absence creates space. Space to be missed, space to be considered, space for others to notice what you no longer give. It's not about punishing, it's about positioning. Absence teaches others what your presence was doing all along. It reveals the effort you were carrying, the peace you were providing, the power you were holding without making it obvious. And when you return, if you choose to, you do so not as someone who needs to be there, but as someone who chose to be. And that changes everything. There's a difference between being visible and being powerful. Visibility relies on performance, attention, likes, applause. Power, on the other hand, does not ask to be seen. It simply exists, and it is felt. Nietzsche knew that the strongest influence comes not from the loudest voice, but from the quiet force you carry into every space. You don't have to announce your presence. You don't have to declare your worth. If it's real, people will feel it. When you detach from the need to be recognized, you move differently. You enter rooms without performing. You speak without persuading. You sit in silence without insecurity. And others notice, not because you demanded attention, but because you didn't. They don't understand why they're drawn to you, why your calm is unsettling, why your lack of need feels like authority. But they feel it, deeply. To be felt, you must first feel yourself, fully. You must sit with your depth, your stillness, your weight. You must be rooted, not restless. And when you are, you carry an invisible gravity. It doesn't flash, it doesn't shout, but it shifts the atmosphere. And that's something no spotlight can give you. In the end, Nietzsche's warning was simple. The world will tempt you to react, to prove, to move constantly, because it fears the one who doesn't. Stillness in this world is terrifying, because it cannot be predicted, it cannot be manipulated, it cannot be rushed. To be still, by choice, is the highest form of control, not over others, over yourself. You do not chase, you do not beg, you do not rush to fill the silence. You allow life to unfold, and you meet it, moment by moment, as it comes, unmoved, uncluttered, unattached. This is not detachment from life, it is mastery within it, because when you are still, you see everything, and you become the one thing no one can push, break, or own, a person who acts only when they choose to, and never before, a person who reclaims their power by doing nothing,